BPB refining capacity, which is coming on stream in the third quarter of this year, is good news. But this huge investment can only be profitable and sustainable and sustained under market pricing regime. Very distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I am very confident that our speakers and resource persons here today will do justice to these issues. I enjoin you all to participate in the conversation so that outcomes will be robust and implementable to achieve our common goal of self-sufficiency in production of finished petroleum products and shared prosperity from huge foreign exchange earnings. I look forward to an interactive and very informative session. Our plan is that after this session, we'll put together the submissions of this seminar and we'll forward to government. We'll forward to about 8 or 10 ministries in government for them to know the thinking of the private sector, to help them in this dilemma of what to do about our subsidy. Very distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please join me to thank 11 PLC. Can you please clap for them, please? Thank you. Niger Delta Petroleum PLC and Ruby Oil for supporting this seminar. Thank you. I would like to recognize our dear friends from the print and electronic media. We thank you for your unflinching support, and we look forward to a very generous coverage of this important seminar to salvage our nation from the stage we are now. Thank you very much.
Another round of applause for our President. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you all that are here physically, and about 60 online participants. I want to thank you for coming this morning. Let me use this opportunity to recognize the President of the Institute of Directors, Nigeria, Dr. E.J. Jidima. Thank you, Ma, for coming. And the Deputy President, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Gabriel Idahosa, FCA. Welcome, sir. All right, so we move on in this program to the first session, the first presentation to be taken by Mr. Tunji Oyebanji, the MD CEO, 11 PLC. He will be talking to us on the background of fuel subsidy in Nigeria, the history, the economics and politics of fuel subsidy in Nigeria. Please, let's welcome Mr. Tunji Oyebanji, MD CEO, 11 PLC. Thank you.
The President and Chairman of Council, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the Deputy President, Mr. Gabriel Idahosa. I would be remiss also if I fail to recognize my dear President and Chairman of Council of the Institute of Directors, Nigeria, under whom I have the pleasure of serving as second vice president. You are welcome, ma'am. The DG of Lagos Chamber of Commerce, my fellow speakers, distinguished members of LCCI, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, you are all very welcome to this very, very important discussion this morning. When this was being conceived, I was thinking about putting a presentation together, but for most of, I would say at least 3/4 of the almost 40 years that I have spent in this industry, since December of 1980, this subject of subsidies, deregulation, has been a very key element of my life. I have been in so many gatherings and discussions and meetings on the subject, such that if you wake me up in my sleep to talk about it, it is something I could talk about for a whole day. Let me start by saying that prior to 1973, there was actually nothing like subsidy in Nigeria. We didn't have to battle with the issues of every time there's need for a price change, people end up in the streets. There's some disruption in economic activities for 3 or 4 days. We discuss, the price is reduced a bit, we go back, without addressing the fundamental issues. And up till today, that remains the fundamental problem. Our failure to want to deal with fundamental issues, but taking what I might describe as a firefighting approach, where we just try and settle the current problem, the current issue, so that things can go back, without saying what is the real cause of this thing. If we do not solve it once and for all, it will become something of a recurring decimal. That is what we have seen. At that time, the major international oil companies dominated the business of oil marketing in Nigeria, along with some of their upstream sister companies. So you had the likes of Shell, you had the likes of Total, you had the likes of Mobil, and Shell at the time invested in a refinery in Port Harcourt, which basically helped to serve the country along with imports, and prices were more or less determined based on the value, and everything seemed to be fine. And then there was the oil price shock that came with crisis in the Middle East, where prices suddenly skyrocketed. And government at the time, in its wisdom, decided they wanted to create a situation where the prices of products, particularly for premium motor spirits, which we know to be PMS or otherwise called gasoline, they wanted those prices to be uniform across the country. As you may want to look at it, you might want to say, okay, a good idea, let's us have a uniform price, but at the end of the day, the question that needed to have been asked, and I guess is still an issue today, is it sustainable? Is it based on a proper economic premise? Because for every other product, be it Coca-Cola, be it any product you can, even beans in the market, you will know that the price at the source where it is produced in the immediate environment is generally cheaper than the price where the product is transported over a long distance. So the very concept of having a uniform price across every corner of the country itself, from an economic standpoint, is fundamentally flawed. So we went into an era of price equalization, and from then the genie had been let out of the box, and all of a sudden issues of price change became big crisis every time it happened. I recall at one session many years ago where I was saying, how long can a country afford to stop working for 3 or 4 days every time there needs to be a price change? Are we the only country in the world that makes use of petrol? But that became the order of the day, and you could see that trend every time there needed to be a price change. Now, one of the things that needed to have been addressed was that those attempts to make a price change never happened on a regular and maybe predetermined basis. What used to happen is that the international price of the product was always allowed to increase significantly, so much so that whenever there needed to be a price change locally, that price change was very significant, and that is what generally led to the pushback by the populace. Imagine a situation where there had been regular, predetermined, marginal increases where the pain would not have been so significant. Perhaps this journey would not have been so difficult and painful over the years. Of course, the basic fundamental or building block for gasoline is crude oil. That forms the biggest component of the product. We are a major producer of crude, but unfortunately, our refining capacity is virtually non-existent, and therefore, as a country, we have depended virtually totally on importation. In fact, as we speak today, virtually 100% of our consumption is imported. And therefore, we are totally exposed to the vagaries of the international market. So over the years, price of crude has gone up. On the plus side, we have benefited as a country up to a point from the increase in the crude oil price, because that means more dollars to our coffers. But on the negative side, every time the price goes up, the difference between how much it costs to land refined products in our country and the prices that have been set by government at the pump continue to widen and increase. There's been a lot of debates. People say, in fact, some people say there's nothing like subsidy. It's all a fallacy and all that. And I really don't understand why there's any misunderstanding as far as this subject is concerned. Because if you are importing a product, be it a car, be it whatever you can think of, televisions, anything you can think of that you import, and you import at a price, but locally you decide to put a cap on the price, then there's obviously going to be a difference between how much you land the product for and that fixed price that you have set. The ideal thing, of course, would be for it to move naturally, so as the price of the refined product that you import goes up, the pump price goes up. But like I said, it became a big political hot potato, and therefore there was reluctance at any time when that price went up for adjustments to be made in the local price. Across the world, many other geographies have what I might describe as they have beaten the bullet. This includes even oil-producing countries, so other countries that produce crude like ourselves. They have come to the realization that this whole concept of subsidizing the cost of fuel if they did not put in a stop to what they were gaining from crude sales in terms of dollar sales, they would be losing in terms of subsidy. And over the years, many have adjusted. Of course, those who don't have crude rarely had no choice. And I often tell people the only reason why there has been a subsidy in Nigeria is because we have crude oil. If there had been no crude oil, I can assure you the issue of subsidy would never have come up because we just wouldn't have been able to afford it. But it, of course, has now got to the stage where we are actually probably spending more on subsidy than what we are earning from the crude. We'll talk a bit more about that later because we are obviously in a serious paradox at this point in time where we are subsidizing, we are borrowing, more or less, we are borrowing money which we are now using to pay for subsidy when you look at the cash flows for the country. But more importantly, all the countries that surround us do not have controlled prices for fuel. So the end result is that close to 30%, by some estimates, of the product that we are importing into Nigeria, that we are subsidizing at extremely great cost, they are actually finding their way across the border. And when people try to put this into context, they actually think of trucks full of 30,000 or 40,000 liters driving across the border. No, it's much more than that. As a young man in this industry, visiting many petrol stations along the various borders of Nigeria, I used to witness the situation where a car that normally would have storage for maybe about 30 liters or 40 liters or maybe 50 liters will come to the station and the attendant will start to sell. And you will be amazed that this small car, whose tank should be only 70 liters, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, the man is still there pumping, and you are looking at the gauge on the pump, and you are seeing 300 liters. And you are wondering, where is the petrol going to? What has happened is the car has been adjusted such that instead of a tank of 70 liters, it now has a tank of 200, 250. And the man's main vocation in life is to drive across the numerous borders that line Nigeria with our neighboring countries, fill up his 300 liters, drive across the border, decant the product, and make a repeat journey. And what you find is that all those petrol stations that line the border area selling significantly higher than what their potential is. Today, there's a big debate as to what exactly is the consumption in Nigeria. Part of the reason for that is that a lot of the product that is going is being consumed, even from the retail outlets, is finding its way across the border. And as long as there's a huge price differential between our country and all those neighboring countries, there will always be leakage because the arbitrage or the differential is so large. And I have said, even if you bring angels to police the border, you will find that those involved in the business will find a way of settling those angels so that the product can continue to flow. The lack of refining capacity in the country has been subject of big debate. I, as an individual, will tell you I am never a fan of government's involvement in business. I think Nigerian history is full of examples. For those in the room who are old enough, you will know we had things like Nigeria Airways, Nigeria Shipping Line, Nigeria Hotels, and a host of other government-owned entities that do not exist anymore. So when government decided to go into refining, I'm sure there are people who wondered whether this would be a sustainable venture. I shudder to think about how much Nigeria has expended in the last 10 to 15 years on various forms of maintenance of the refineries. And yet today, none of those government-owned refineries are working. Definitely, if that had been a commercial enterprise, all those would have been sold off to other people to try and run them better on a commercial basis. The lack of that refining capacity obviously is what led to this 100% importation of products into the country. Over the years, government regulatory agencies have licensed many refineries. In fact, there was a time I understood there must have been over 60 licenses approved for refineries. But when you look back, I think today maybe you may find 10, if they are even up to 10, that have actually either broken ground or are operating, and all those are generally relatively small refineries. Okay, I'm being warned about time. Thank you. I told you this is a subject I can talk about forever, so it's good they are reminding me of time. So, when you take your project for a refinery to the bank, the first question the banker will ask you is, how are you going to finance this, or how are you going to pay? What is the cash flow? And what is the main product you are going to sell? And if you say gasoline, his next question will be, okay, are you in control of the price? And when you say no, the average banker is going to tell you, sorry, I'm not able to finance your project. And that is why today you find that many of those projects did not see the light of day. And for those that are these modular, smaller refineries, many of them are producing mostly AGO rather than petrol, simply because the price of petrol has remained regulated. So anyway, we moved along over the years and we found ourselves at the point of signing off the PIA, which the President alluded to in his opening remarks. This was after an ongoing struggle, debate, effort of over 20 years, and finally the political will to sign that bill into law was in place, and it was signed. But very shortly thereafter, we have seen that the key elements, or one of the key elements, which is the deregulation of the price of gasoline, has been suspended and put in abeyance. And the implication of that is, firstly, that doesn't bode well for investors who want a very clear direction as to where things are going. Those who may have felt bold enough to take the step will now be saying, wait a minute, I think there's something happening here, I should put things on hold. We are now staring at a potential bill of 4 trillion naira for subsidy in the year 2022. When you put that side by side with the budget and what is being spent on capital and other aspects of the budget, you will find that if you simplified everything, you look at, in terms of what we are spending money on, subsidy, we are spending huge amounts on debt servicing, we are spending huge huge amounts on recurrent expenditure, then where is the money that is going to be invested to make Nigeria better for the future? The answer, I would say, is blowing in the wind. Now, what has been the argument over the years? The argument has been the common man will suffer, there will be inflation. That argument hasn't changed for the last 20 or 30 years. If we had taken the decision, maybe those 20 or 30 years, the pain would have been much less than it is now. But it is not something we can wish away. I've often told people, when something requires an economic solution, but you give it a political solution, it is only temporary for a short period. Because if you don't address the economic fundamentals of that problem, you will have a problem. So, what can be done? Let me end on that note. For me, you need to, there's issues of perception. There's a group in our society who will obviously say, there's no, they don't, if this deregulation means, or removal of subsidy means prices of petrol will go up, there's nothing you will ever tell them, they will never understand. So it's not about logic anymore for that group of people. But for a lot of people, they understand, but they say, okay, what are you going to do for us? And that is where the issue of trust between the population and between population and government comes in. And I have often said that one of the things that we should do is work on our transportation system, i.e. the rail system, i.e. making transportation as cheap as possible for people so that the full brunt of subsidy removal will not be felt. But either way, whichever way you look at it, you need to provide some kind of safety net for the people that may be most affected by this policy shift. So I'd like to end there. Definitely, my intention has been to sort of set a foundation for the further discussions that are going to take place. But like somebody has said, if we do not kill subsidy, subsidy will kill us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. The point is made. We do not know exactly what
has been prepared. I will speak through the slide if it is available. If it is not available, I will proceed nevertheless. What I've tried to do is to look at the total budget figures that we have had since 2017. So we look at the budget figures for 2017, 2018, 2019, up till 2022. And then we look at figures we have, what has been budgeted in each of these, in each year's budget for capital expenditure. Capital expenditure, we're looking at the total capital expenditure, including expenditure on education, on health, on power, and on infrastructure. And then we look at the estimate spend on fuel subsidy. Let me just give a caveat at this point. It is really very difficult getting official figures for the estimate, for the exact spend on fuel subsidy. So what I have done is to call it estimate spend, because honestly I couldn't get official figures from anywhere, and the figures you are seeing on the chart are figures that are either picked from news bulletins, picked from expert opinion, picked from figures estimated by
international organizations like the World Bank, and also picked from figures, picked from comments made by the minister or comments made by government officials. So I cannot refer you to any particular website for these figures, but if you look generally, if you search generally, you will see figures that may not be exact, but then they are going to range within the same, they're going to be within the same range. So the figures are not precise, don't hold me to them, but then they give an idea of what we're talking about. It would have been better if when we go to NNPC's website, we can see the figures, or if the Bureau for Statistics had takes the step to ensure that these figures are printed, but this is the best we have to go by. And what is immediately obvious, looking at the chart, from 2017, we have a total budget figure of 7.4 trillion, and we have a fuel subsidy spend of approximately 144.5 billion. That grew dramatically to, in 2018, 722 billion. There may be a number of factors that are responsible for that, but I believe the economists during the conversation will be able to perhaps give some good context as to why the figure rose dramatically between 2017 to 2018, and then in 2019 we can see that the figure had risen further to 1.5 trillion. There's no figure for 2020. That is because as much as I searched, I could not find anything that I could, in good conscience, put there as a figure for 2020. However, for 2021, we have figures ranging between 1.7 billion to 1.8 billion. Those were the consensus figures from what we have available from different sources. For 2022, that is more precise. We know based on the recent letter written by the President around the middle of February to the National Assembly, that the National Assembly is being asked to approve 3 trillion plus for fuel subsidy. So on this chart, you can see what we have as the total budget, what we have as capital expenditure, and what we're looking at for fuel subsidy. Now for 2022, the figure is projected from what Mr. Ibanji said earlier on. It is possible that if we go ahead and implement the subsidy, we may spend up to 4 trillion naira on fuel subsidy this year. Before going further, looking at the budget deficit for this year, the money that government intends to borrow in order to implement the budget, the government is looking to borrow in excess of 6 trillion naira. However, the plan is that we may spend between 3 trillion to 4 trillion subsidizing our consumption of PMS. The next slide where we have the pie chart. Yeah, basically what we try to do here is to basically break down, to show the percentage of fuel subsidy relative to the entire budget. So for 2017, it's about 2%. For 2018, we're looking at 8% of the national budget being used to fund subsidy. For 2019, it was 17%, and it keeps growing. For 2021, it was 12%. 12% in 2021 because the budget figure is getting bigger and bigger, and although we're looking at a 17 trillion budget this year, 18%, if the plan for fuel subsidy is implemented, we're looking at 18% of our national budget being spent on fuel subsidy. Looking at the chart, I think what just occurred to me is the difference we are likely to feel if indeed the amount to be spent on fuel subsidy are not spent on fuel subsidy, but they are spent on as part of capital expenditure and used to provide the critical infrastructure that the country may need. Then the next slide, again, basically to make the case. What we've done here is to compare the spending. So the first bar has to do is the education sector. The next is the health sector. The third bar is the spending on works, power, and housing. And then the last one, that is the red one, is the fuel subsidy spend. So in 2017, we can see exactly the spread. That is the amount spent on subsidizing PMS consumption as compared to amount spent on education, the amount spent on the health sector, the amount spent on providing critical infrastructure for the country, like roads, power, and so on and so forth, and housing projects. In 2018, we could see a significant difference when we compare what was spent on fuel subsidy, petrol, compared to what was spent on education, health, and the other critical sector. In 2019, it has grown bigger. And in 2020, again, I don't have the figure for 2020, so that's why the chart is not showing. However, in 2021, the gap is getting longer and longer. It will appear, looking at 2019 and 2021, that the combined spend on other sector is dwarfed by the spend on fuel subsidy. So, looking at this, in my view, in graphic form, shows the cost to the government and directly and indirectly to every sector, to the private sector, and to every individual that is a citizen of Nigeria, whether poor or rich. These charts actually indicate the cost to us, because when we complain about failure of health services, there's a bit of explanation of why that is the case. When we complain about in-season strike by the universities, the reasons for that are becoming obvious. The more we look at the chart, the reasons for that become obvious. So let's shift to the next slide. I so much time here because, again, the first speaker actually dealt with this. The arguments that are given, the arguments are true. The points with respect to what will be the cost of removing of retaining fuel subsidy. If we remove it, there will be inflation. But the truth is that the way our economy is structured right now, whether we remove it or not, there will be inflation, and continuous continuous insistence on maintaining the status quo is likely to make matters worse. As we have seen, what happens in other nations is affecting us, and because we don't have any solid and resilient economic infrastructure, we virtually don't have any working public goods. Because of that, the impact of anything that happens, both within the country and outside the country, is immediately felt in multiple proportions, and it is felt both by the rich and by the poor as well. Promotion of illegality. People have argued that if one of the arguments I saw, which I consider interesting, is that if fuel subsidy is removed, it is going to encourage illegal refining. I don't think that will be the case, because if fuel subsidy is removed, a lot of people, from what we've heard, about 10 years ago, there were almost 60 licenses, actually about 60 licenses granted for oil refining. The few that have been able to scale all the hurdles and are focusing on producing diesel. Why? Diesel is deregulated. So we could imagine if PMS is deregulated and a lot of people come into the market, produce the product, the incentive for illegal refining will decline. Because the reason for black market and the economists can speak more to this is actually the fact that what ought to be sufficiently available is not sufficiently available. And if we're refining enough, and people can easily walk into any fuel station and ensure that they are getting good product, nobody will go and patronize a product that they cannot even be sure of a standard. So I do not think removal of subsidy will lead to a preponderance of illegal refinery. But if the licensing process for getting refinery up and running is clear, if the pricing template is certain and cannot be tampered with, people will produce more, and then there will be no reason for that. People have argued that if government, before government removes subsidy, they will need to ensure the refineries are working. Let's have enough the refinery that we meet all our consumption need. Now, again, from what I know that the fact that we have refinery will not immediately or automatically translate to a reduction in price, because again, what affects price from what the factors that affect price is not just the fact that we don't have refinery. There's the product itself. The product is an international commodity, and it is priced at international price. It is priced using a global system. There's no way company A that is producing petrol in Nigeria, we choose to sell petrol, that is producing crude in Nigeria, we choose to sell its crude to a Nigerian refinery at a rate that is cheaper than how much the such producer is likely to get if the producer were to sell outside the country. Interestingly, this is an interesting discussion that is also going on in the gas sector, because in the gas sector we have the domestic supply obligation, and we do hear producers make the case, and they make the case quite well too, that it may be necessary for government to step away from price regulation in order to ensure in order to ensure that the product is competitively priced, and that when that is done, that would be a step in the right direction to ensuring that the product is readily available. Even if we have refineries in Nigeria and government decides to start controlling the prices at which crude is sold to refinery, we may meet another problem that we have not yet anticipated. So it may not be correct to say that if we have refineries, the product will not be expensive. The product will come at how the market ought to price it. That is what will make the product to be optimally available. I will go to the last slide, which basically looks at the argument for subsidy removal. I think one of the, although I don't have this on my slide, I think one of the key advantage of removing the subsidy is certainty. The certainty it gives all the people that are involved in the value chain, and also the certainty it will give consumers, because immediately you remove the opaqueness that subsidy engenders. it becomes easier for people to understand why a product is priced the way it is priced. If we look at the telecom sector, it is easier. Almost everybody on the street can tell you why MTN price is this for data and why Glo price is that for data. In fact, by the time we look at it, it's like all of them are even similarly priced because they're all operating within the same market. They face the same challenges, and it is easy to understand. So I think removal the removal of the subsidy will introduce certainty, and one thing certainty does, both for businesses and individual, is that it gives the ability. It gives the ability to everyone to plan appropriately. Of course, if we're using the market structure, the supply, the production will be sustainable. The opportunity cost that we currently bear through our subsidy program will disappear. We are probably able to ask government with some conviction, what really are you spending the money for? And the argument that we are spending it for fuel subsidy will no longer be available. It is. Part of the reason that have been given by experts is that one of the reason why we are suffering from exchange rate instability is because Nigeria foreign external reserve keeps depleting, and one of the reasons why this keeps depleting is because of subsidy. Also, the fact of subsidy makes it difficult for government to plan. For instance, looking at 2022 budget, is still estimate. We're still estimating whether we're going to spend 3 trillion or 4 trillion or some other figures on subsidy. We'll be able to use funds more efficiently. The environmentalists will be happy, and perhaps it will, to some extent, lead to cleaner air in Nigeria. And certainly, the issue of smuggling had been highlighted. A few days ago, I was watching on the TV in Nasarawa, where the custom officials were displaying some of the things that were recovered from smugglers. Amongst them is over 1,000 jerry cans of PMS that were going to be driven across the border. And then we've heard of other ways in which it is happening. Now, the truth is that as long as the arbitrage, the cost in Nigeria is significantly different from the cost from all our neighbors, it is not possible. Even if we get angels at the border and those angels are incorruptible, people will keep coming up with innovative means, innovative technology if possible, to ensure that they are able to get a product out of here and make a higher profit next door. I'll be stopping here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sipasi from Alex Partners. Let's give another round of applause. I want to thank again our participants online, about 85 of them. And at some point, we're going to read their questions, and then the panelists will give answers to the questions. So right away, we want to go to the panel session, and I want to introduce the panelist and the moderator. The moderator this morning is Mr. Pedro Omotwe-Men, partner, PwC, Nigeria. A round of applause for moderator, Mr. Pedro Omotwe-Men, partner, PwC. And to join him in this panel session, we have our first presenter, Mr. Tunji Oyebanji, CEO, 11 PLC. Also to join him is Mr. Clement Isong, the CEO, Major Oil Marketers Association of Nigeria, MOMAN. Joining us virtually, already connected, is the chairman, NLC, Nigeria Labour Congress, Lagos State Chapter, Comrade Fumi Shesi. She's online and she'll make her contributions from where she is. Then also joining is the business editor, the Guardian newspaper, Dr. Femi Adekoya. Dr. Femi Adekoya, business editor, the Guardian newspaper. Also, we have Mr. Olushino Sipasi, the presenter that just finished, partner Elex, to also join in the panel discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, we have this session ready to go. I will hand over now to Mr. Pedro Omotweme, partner PwC, our moderator. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And once again, thanks for inviting me to this section. I think it's been a wonderful session so far. I don't know whether you've been taking notes, but listening to Mr. Shipasi speak and Mr. Tunji speak, there's a lot of issues that we need to talk about. But before we go ahead, I know, Mr. Clement, you had a presentation that you wanted to make. Well, I wanted to start with you, maybe as the MD of the Executive Secretary of the MOMAN, a few comments about the what we've heard about so far before we start digging into questions. So these are just opening remarks from you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. So I think the case has been extremely well made by the speakers today. I just want to focus, however, on the way forward. What do we now do? I don't think we can really get into an argument that the subsidy payments is not good for the country. The challenge really is, what do we do going forward? As at today, there are very many reasons why we would hesitate to remove the subsidy. The last fuel scarcity that we have just gone through was very real for all of you. And the question that you ask yourself is, with the war going on between Russia and Ukraine and the increase in costs, I saw this morning somewhere diesel at 750 naira. I came in from Abuja last night at 1 a.m. because to attend this seminar. I was at the meeting at the House of Reps with the airline operators. They threatened that their price, cheapest ticket, will be 120,000 because they have to buy aviation fuel at 500 naira. I'm expecting to be called by the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria because of the diesel price as well. Costs are expensive because the crude oil prices have gone up significantly. The question we must ask ourselves is, what are we going to do about it? Are we going to continue to print money, borrow money in order to subsidize these costs? How sustainable is that for the country, for ourselves, and for our children? At some point in time, when diesel reaches 1,000 naira, or when petrol today, the subsidy, I understand, I was hearing 4 trillion, but my calculation is a bit more than that, if things continue as they are. Because there is a subsidy that is being paid with respect to the product. There's another subsidy that is being paid with respect to the foreign exchange. If you put those together, the numbers I get are 6 trillion. And that is if prices do not go up further. So the question we must ask ourselves, what happens if it goes up to 9 trillion, 10 trillion? Do we just close our eyes and continue At some point in time, we have to behave responsibly as a country. To be clear, in the industry, those in the industry do not like the concept of price control or subsidies, because usually it is not just the government that is subsidizing, we are also subsidizing. We are unable to recover a lot of our costs. I'll give you an example. Diesel. Many of you are buying diesel. Diesel is tough for everybody. You probably do not realize that diesel forms the backbone of the distribution system of the petrol. So, if diesel has gone up to 750, the trucks that are carrying the petrol, if they are not being compensated for the increase in diesel, or the stations, we are talking about system collapse of electricity yesterday, all stations run on diesel. They probably burn more diesel than the trucks that deliver the diesel to the stations. So if you look at that cost, and those costs are not recovered either by the transporter or the station dealer, how sustainable do you think it is? Or if you're going to adjust the price, isn't it about time that we asked ourselves, is there another way of doing this? And I would suggest that we should begin to focus, rather than giving the subsidy for individual cars, which is what happens with petrol, maybe we should take that money and put into mass transportation. If we are taken for the last 20, 30, 50 years, actually, we've been doing this, and we have put all that money into metro railway systems, into BRT buses, into different ways of bringing staple foods from the breadbasket states to the urban centers. If we had invested in infrastructure, if we had put that money, then today we would be better prepared to dealing with the crisis that the whole world is in right now. Because it's not just Nigeria. In every single country, even in the US, they're talking about $4 per gallon petrol. But you see, they will probably intervene now because they can. But for us, we have been intervening when it was much lower, and we have been borrowing money to do so. So in a world in which 96% of our revenue goes on servicing debt, and what we plan to do as a country is to incur more debt, if it gets to 4 trillion, 6 trillion, 9 trillion, where will it stop? At some point in time, we have to be responsible, if not for ourselves, but for our children. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Just hold it on. That'll be a good way to start. Thanks so very much. I know that Comrade Fumi Sesi, I don't know if you can hear us. I hear she's on the line. She's the chairman of the Lagos chapter of LLC. I know one of the biggest opponents, if I may use the word, of fuel subsidy removal is the Labour. So, Comrade, can you hear me? Can she hear me? I'm not sure if I can hear. Not sure if you can hear, but I wanted to ask a question to start with, but if she can hear us at any point, I'd like to know once she can hear us. But Mr. Tunji, let's start with you on my left. As of today, what is the landing cost? Now, ladies and gentlemen, let me say that more often than not, in meetings like this, we kind of send people the questions before the time and they were prepared. But these people have not been sent questions, so I'm putting them on the hot spot. Okay, so these are not corrected questions. Is that correct for me? Okay, I'm going to come back to you.
Yes, please.
So, Mr. Tunji, what is the landing cost of PMS as of today?
Well, that's why my answer will not be straight, is because the very interesting issue is where you get your foreign exchange.
Okay.
And at the rate you get it, since you are going to import. I'm going to be very careful about the comments I make. You see, there is an exchange rate that may be published, and there's also an exchange rate at which you can eventually get the dollars. The two are not the same. And for our business, and because of the quantum of business that we do, the size of the cargoes you need a lot of dollars, whether it's AGO or ADK. Thereabouts.
Yes.
But if the product, the dollars, from where we can get the dollars and because that is not the cost of the dollar on the street.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that question was important, so we can set the scene about what the landing cost is. Comrade, can you hear me?
Yes, please. I can.
Okay, so you can hear me.
I can
Okay.
hear
So
you.
the question I was going to ask the comrade is, I know that the labor is always anti-fuel subsidy remover. And one of their arguments is that everywhere in the world there's a form of subsidy. Whether you call it subsidy, you call it grant, whatever you call it, there's a form of subsidy or grant in most parts of the world. Okay. The question will be the depth and the extent of the subsidy. So for the labor, if the government, if you say government should not remove subsidy, what are the options you're putting on the table?
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Nigeria Labour Congress has our own position. And our position, let me quickly just brush through it so that Nigerians can know the NLC position. A crisis foretold, local refinery of petroleum is the answer. That is our demand. It is with great pain, sadness, and alarm that the Nigeria Labour Congress observes the continued acute scarcity of petroleum products at different petrol stations in the country. A crisis that started with the supply of substandard premium motor oil spirit has now degenerated into a persistent scarcity of not only PMS, but also other petroleum products, such as diesel and also the aviation fuel. We've heard from the aviation sector that are also threatening a total shutdown in a few weeks' time if this condition does not improve. It's also disturbing that motorists, keke operators, and everybody will have to go to fuel station to queue for a very long hour. And at the end of the day, you might not even get this product to buy, even at a very exorbitant prices, ranging from between 220 to about 300 and 350 naira. Nigeria Labour Congress has been, sounding a note of warning to the federal government for some time now. It has been a recurrent situation that we've been telling the government not to rely solely or totally on foreign entity for the products for this country. We have actually asked the government to put our refineries. We have 4 refineries that were built with Nigerian tax money, to put them into use to actually, either start building new ones, to also ensure that we allow investors from private and also the government, as government is doing this on the public note, to also allow private investors to build large refineries and also the modular ones. We thank God that at least a Nigerian is coming up in form of a Dangote refinery that is almost ready now. But Nigerians need a quick solution to these problems, or else this the untold pain and hardship that is coming to Nigerians is becoming unbearable. And if this persists and continues, definitely Nigerians will no longer, it will have a stage at which we can stomach it, and at which we can actually, continue to allow this pain to go. Definitely, the crude oil prices has gone up, and Nigeria can harvest the bumper prices in the oil sector. We can use this bumper dollar harvest to put our refineries, to put it into a rehabilitation, to use it to rehabilitate our refineries, and now be refining our product locally. It will also save us of these capital flights, sourcing for dollars or for hard currency to buy products from foreign countries. And this is why the prices is going up. If we can refine our product locally, use the bumper harvest, the dollar.
So, may I hear you? I think your point is clear. Refine locally. Okay, Mr. Tunji and Mr. So, I'm going to come back to you on that, because earlier on you talked about 60 licenses have been granted, and Dangote Refinery, we all know about Dangote Refinery, and for those of us who are aware of large projects like Dangote Refinery, there will always be extensions, and that project have been extended, and now we are told second quarter of this year or maybe next year. What is the challenge with local refinery? Why are we not able to get it right?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think let me start by saying we are all Nigerians. Sometimes the impression is created as if we are less concerned about the so-called average Nigerian, or that is certainly not the case.
Yes.
Now, I've talked about some things when I was making my comments earlier. There are various things. First and foremost, refining is a global big business. We have this fallacy again in Nigeria that Nigeria is just a country, the only country in the world. Many international companies are actually closing refineries across the world because the margins in the business are extremely thin. Okay? Secondly, there are some refineries in some parts of the world that are huge. Dangote is the largest single train refinery, but there are other refineries that are producing at the level of 1,200,000 barrels a day.
Yeah.
Huge refineries that for you to be able to compete with them, your own refinery, even in your own country, because of the
economies of scale.
The economies of scale are so much that they may be able to land product from that refinery to your own country cheaper than you are manufacturing locally. Okay? So the people need to get this thing right. People are suddenly thinking the day Dangote refinery starts working in Nigeria, the price of petrol will go to 20 naira per liter. It will not, because the refinery is going to buy crude at the same dollar price as if he was buying it from anywhere in the world. So that whole concept needs to change. Then secondly, the modular refineries we are talking about, like we said, most of them is diesel they are producing.
Yeah.
And even if they are producing petrol, when you have a refinery that is 10,000 barrels a day or 20,000 barrels a day, how is it going to be competing with a refinery that produces 650,000 barrels a day, that is evacuating maybe 1,000 or 2,000 trucks of petrol every day? And you have a small refinery that is maybe producing 30 trucks or 20 trucks a day. You will not be able to compete effectively. So people need to understand some of these things. It's easy to say, because of the general hardship in the country, to give the impression that this is a magic wand that will solve all the problems. As for the government refineries, it is very difficult, like every other business that you run. I'm sure there are people here who are businessmen. You make your decisions, you do your investments on the spot. Maybe it takes you 2 hours to make a decision. When you are running a refinery and something spoils in the refinery, where the refinery has to meet, it will now go to the board of NNPC. If it's a big amount, maybe it has to go to Federal Executive Council. Meanwhile, the refinery has stopped working. The private people would have made the decision, immediately made the investment and done the repairs that are necessary. So over time, the refineries continue to deteriorate. And don't forget, given the age of some of those refineries, if they had been, so it's very difficult to make a Peugeot 504, even if you put new engine inside, it will still more or less old. You can upgrade it and make it more modern, but the age of the refinery starts to tell. So actually, government being the proprietor and operator of those refineries, to me, is not something that can work. And the final point is, she talked about government should build new refinery. You've talked about the budget, the economics, and what is being spent. When a refinery to build, the Dangote refinery may be upwards of $15 billion. Where is that money going to come from inside this budget that we've just talked about, that we can't finance road, education, health? You are now talking about $15 billion to build a refinery. You know it's going to be an uphill task to find that money. So it's only the private sector that really can find that capital. But even that capital today is difficult for banks to support it because of the world is going to renewables anyway, so they don't want to finance fossil fuels projects. And secondly, the main product that you are going to produce from the refinery, the price is controlled. So you don't have control over the margin, and how will you pay the money back? Okay. So all those arguments may sound nice, but when you subject them to rigorous thinking, it becomes a challenge.
Okay,
thank you.
I like your paper earlier on, because we talk about the history, the politics, and the economics. And I think it's better for us as players in the private sector to separate the economics from the history, from the politics, and ensure that we do the right thing. So I'm going to ask Mr. Shino a question, follow up to your presentation. Now, you talk about the size of the subsidy. We are talking about 4 trillion or potentially 6 trillion. If that, I know in the past we've had a Shopee, I think there's a program called Shopee, where questions from the audience. Okay. Wow. Okay. Thank you. There are 90 participants online and they are joining us. Please, those participants online, please ask your questions, type in your questions, and when we have time, we're going to come back and take those questions. Now, if government does not spend 4 trillion or 6 trillion on subsidy, what should that money be directed to have the social benefit impact?
Basically, there are so many things, and I'm sure economists can expand this better, that affect how, that determine prices.
Yes.
Okay, for instance, someone who is a farmer, let's say a goat farmer.
Yes.
In order to maximize his profit, we require electricity, we require security, we require water, we require good roads.
Yes.
We require supporting businesses that can provide feeds and so on and so forth. And all of these other businesses depend on, again, all these things, electricity. Now, what we find is that in order to do this business here, you have to provide your water, you have to provide your electricity, you have to provide your security, you need to pay the people in surrounding communities to ensure that your farm remains safe, and so on and so on and so forth. All these things contribute to the cost of doing business. Now, the issue is that why do we have all these unanticipated costs?
Yeah.
Because infrastructure in the first place is not available. if there's a way everybody can come to a consensus, the government, the civil society, labor can come to a consensus and find a way of saying that what is likely, the amount that is likely to be subsidy savings, can we find a way of, can we agree
what to do
that
with the money?
it should be invested in this particular infrastructure or not? And I think it is something that has to be a frank discussion with people projecting and actually analyzing the impact of this particular option that people are choosing. Let's say, oh, we want it invested on road. There must be quantifiable reasons why we think road is the most efficient way to spend this, let's say the savings we're going to have in the next 2 years. Maybe in another 2 years, maybe we spend it on power. On another 2 years, do we spend a percentage of it in providing security? Are we looking 10 years ahead? Okay. How do we ensure that the youths of today are going to be gainfully engaged in 10 years so that they won't become nuisances to businesses, and thereby keep increasing the cost of doing business for everybody?
Thanks. I'm going to move on to our political, our business editor from Guardian, Dr. Femi. You know, there seems to be a trap, set up, but if I use that word, forgive me. The government, with the PIA, have extended implementation by 18 months. It means you have extended subsidy by 18 months. For if we do the calculations correctly, in 18 months' time, there would likely be a new administration, whether APC, PDP, SSG, ROS, whatever, there will be a new administration. Is that a trap set up for the new administration? And what should we, as private sector, be doing to support that the next government, whoever it is?
Thank you for the opportunity to answer this question. Okay, maybe I should start this way. We are all victims of the structural problems in this country. So, at several points in time, the media often find themselves in the middle, either supporting the government or having to speak on behalf of the people. So in this situation, as it were, subsidy at some point has to go. Okay. That's given. But the question is, I also believe that the present administration lost an opportunity in 2016 to actually do things right when it came up with the plan to modulate prices. If it had followed through, it could have gradually phased out subsidy and allow the private sector take over and allow prices to work. Unfortunately, we saw the administration backtrack, and when oil prices went down during COVID, they tried to bring politics into business by trying to save face and also give palliative, if I have to use that word. And we saw how that has backfired now, because it was at a time when inflation was also high. So now you have to debate, you have to choose between satisfying the people or also allowing logic to reign. So it was at that point this administration missed it. Now to a new administration, the problem is these problems remain. Anyone coming in, like I do tell some of my colleagues, I do not envy the new administration. Whoever is coming to become Nigeria's president has a lot to deal with. And one of it has to do with subsidy. Who will remove it? Will the new administration be bold enough to go ahead to say, this is the first battle I'm going to fight? It's a very tough decision. Secondly, when you look at debt and the way we've ramped up our debt profile over the years, the question also is, how do we maintain this? So if you have to work around this, it means we have to look at our structural problems and think of how best to solve this problem. And at some point in time, we also have to, I think the new administration also have to get to earn the trust of the people, because that's the major issue around here. Trust is missing. And when you look at the social contract between the people and the government, it appears to be broken. So once a new administration can end that trust, because that was exactly what helped this administration the first time. Trust. People had the trust that, this administration was going to do this, and prices were adjusted the first time. People did not revolt in 2016.
Yeah.
it was given, people trusted the government. So if the same people do not trust the same administration again, something is missing. So the responsibility for the new administration is to look at how to earn the trust of the people to be able to take on bold reforms. If not, we can't continue it this way any longer. It's not sustainable. So if trust is given, or if trust is earned, then certain reforms can be taken. And it's a process. You tell people, I want to do this. For instance, when government was saying subsidy was going to be removed, and the next thing the minister was going to come up with was, we're going to share 5,000 naira to people. And people felt there was no logic in this decision. If you had waited to say, oh, we have plans to do so and so over a period of time, and let people see reason, then you can be sure people will follow through. But not that you wake up today, oh, we plan to remove subsidy, and we share 5,000 naira. The question people ask is, are we fools? So if trust can be earned, I believe a lot can be easy or easier for the new administration, but it's not going to be an easy ride. Okay. It's not going to be an easy ride.
Thank you. It will not be an easy ride for whoever becomes president. Maybe we should vote Mr. Tunji as president so he can solve it for us. Okay. Back to you now. There's a PIA, and the PIA has NNPC Limited. And if you read the PIA, it says that NNPC Limited will be the supplier of last resort or something in case there is scarcity. So, so I'm battling my mind. If NNPC Limited is supposed to be commercial, now become the supplier of last resort, is that an indirect way of bringing subsidy even into the PIA?
Well, the way the PIA is written, NNPC Limited is supposed to be commercially run.
Yes.
And my understanding is that it has reorganized itself to be commercially run.
Yes.
We have all enjoyed its new transparency. We see they publish their numbers openly now. And I must say that NNPC Limited appeared to have not only wanted to remove the subsidy, but they actually championed it. They championed it. They think it is the right thing to do. Unfortunately, when the political decision was taken, we must all be pragmatic. NNPC Limited belongs to the government. It's an instrument of the government. So once that decision is taken by the government, NNPC falls in line and does what the government wants. The government said, kick the can down the road. We will do it in 18 months' time. Subsidy is not going to be removed now. This is government policy. NNPC will follow what its master says.
Okay, thank you. Shall I'm going to, I'm going to come to you with a follow-on question. So I hear you. NNPC will follow what the master says. Master says move by 18 months. We move by 18 months, and hoping that in the next 18 months we will revisit the situation and see what will happen. Okay, so thanks again for your presentation. You looked at the numbers, and you've told us how big the subsidy is, and potentially it's going to grow. To grow. My question is, right now once the subsidy comes, someone is paying for the subsidy, which is the government, and I think that money comes out of what they call FAC, the Federal Allocation, Federal Account and Allocation Committee, and that's the money that goes to the 36 states and the 700 something local governments. If the allocation, if the subsidy grows to 6 trillion or 4 trillion, where will the state get the money? What are the options for the state?
So that's one of the reasons why we are also seeing increasing agitation by the people who run the state for the removal of the subsidy.
So even the governors are supporting it?
Yes. Yes, actually.
Wow, okay. So I think it's good for Nigerians to know that the subsidy does not come from somewhere. It's coming from somebody's pocket. Okay, so once that subsidy is removed, the state will have less and less to share. I'm going to come to the president of IOD to give us a comment soon, but there's a question for my comrade, I don't know if she's still online. Comrade, there's a question from you from the floor here. It says, Labour at one time managed transportation business. How far is that venture now? Comrade, are you still here?
Labour has managed. Yes, please, I'm here. I think the issue in Nigeria generally is actually about what are the infrastructures that has been provided for business ventures to be practically ventures that you will do and you'll be successful. If you want to be successful in transportation area, the roads must be good for you to ply. The government must regulate how parts for this business, how they come into Nigeria, how you source for parts, not with hard currency. You understand what I mean? Not only that, there are so many indices before businesses can survive in this country. For businessmen, it's been a very harsh condition for any business to survive in this country. I mean to say, there are so many things that goes behind the scene that people will not see, that makes most of the businessmen to have a rethink of whether they still want to continue in the business or they want to leave the business. There are so many policies that the government comes out with. The same government that wants businesses to, private people to come into business, will tomorrow, get up and also go into the same business, and thereby making that same business not to be viable for businessmen. Nigeria Labour Congress did not go into transport business to make money out of it. NLC went into it to make life to be less burdensome for Nigerians, most especially the workers and the poor masses. Even up to, as I'm talking to you now, NLC buses, we have not increased our prices at any time. The prices of the buses is still 100 naira from Ikorodu to Lagos Island. You can go and find out. Even when the BRT buses and the government buses and all other ones have increased more than 250%, NLC buses still remains the same, just to ease the burden of Nigeria on transportation. It's for low people like us.
Thank you so much. I think I like that. I think next time we have to go and look for that bus to enter from Ikorodu to Victoria Island at 100 naira. We need more of such NLC buses. Thank you, comrade. Okay, President IJ, Dr. IJ, you want a few minutes. Can you give her the microphone, please, to just talk to us briefly, your comments as we begin to, I know my time is going and they're motioning to me, but there's one or two questions we want to take from the screen. Madam, your comments, please. Please sit down, ma.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
It's been very exciting. I thank Asiwaju, Dr. Michael Olaweleko, for inviting us, CON, for inviting us. And I must also thank Mr. Tunji Oyebanji, our first Vice President, and all the other panelists for their contributions. I would like to say that it's a very, very important topic that we are discussing today. It's not an easy ride. If it were, it would have been so easy to be on whatever side. But I think that from all the discussions, what we have come to realize is that the removal of fuel subsidy is, in fact, inevitable. So the question is when and how. And if that is the case, we would recommend that there would be a proper handshake between the public sector and the private sector in coming up with solutions, the pain points because in some of these analyses, sometimes we forget about our own peculiarities. Because if people are talking about fuel and so on, what comes to mind is transportation.
Yes.
But in Nigeria, it's much more than transportation. It is about that barber that has to fuel their generator for electricity. It is about that new entrepreneur who is striving, but somehow is handicapped by unavailability of these products. So I think it's something that we need to look at from the pain points, and that the government should not necessarily pass the inefficiencies that subsist in the fuel subsidy to the consumers. There has to be other things like stability in foreign exchange, and I think the CBN's intervention is also commendable, but these are temporary things. So these are some of the things that we need to look at carefully and see how we address the pain points seriously. And I think in our climb, what is actually lacking is the discipline to follow through things, because these sort of things, I think, should be in phases, so that the pains would be tolerable. So that's my own contributions to this discourse.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Ife. Thank you very much. Very salient contribution. Can we give a round of applause, please? This should be in phases. And if you remember when Mr. Tunji was speaking earlier on, that once the price goes up in international market, we don't respond on time. We wait for a long time, then we come back to respond. So if we start adjusting as the international price goes up, then the pain will not be that much. You know, there's a point you raised earlier on, Doctor, about the issue about the opportunity we missed to adjust. I think there was a time when the oil price was about $30 or so, when even I think the landing cost was lower than the pump price. Was that an opportunity? I want to go back and expatiate. Was that an opportunity we should have used to say, guys, this is time to deregulate, and then you go to the station tomorrow, we actually bring the price down. Everybody will be happy. Because we've all agreed on the deregulation. Even Labour would have agreed. Then when the price goes up, you know, can you speak to that again? Yeah.
Thank you once again. So, like I said earlier, the major opportunity we had at that time was when prices were low. Even as at 2016, the foreign exchange rate wasn't as bad as this.
Yes.
So it was an opportunity for us to look at the value chain and actually bring out a structured plan on how to go about this.
Yeah.
I think that was what was missing. So we allowed politics to prevail. So it was just by the mere announcement of the minister, there are palliatives everywhere. So let's make people happy. Left to me, I would have said, no, don't even touch the fuel price. You could have left it and looked at how best you can address certain issues. So if we had looked at the prices at that moment and brought out a structured plan on how we plan to phase things out, then people will have adjusted. And my worry also is this: we are looking at the futures market.
Yes.
So oil is not static.
Yes.
As at this morning, Brent was being sold for about $100, $9,900. But one of the concerns I also have sometimes about the private sector also was, if you look at the trend in the last 2 weeks when it comes to diesel, you look at the prices were moving.
Yes.
Diesel prices were also adjusting.
Yes.
Now
that there's a
look
reverse.
I'm just saying. So look at this week now. Like I said, it's a futures market, and in the futures market, it's not static.
Yes.
So we also have to be very careful about how we work around this. So it's either one, we're ready to allow the private sector work, and the regulators sit and monitor and protect and ensure that competition actually thrives, rather than the market players taking charge. of how things are happening, because that was exactly what happened with aviation fuel.
Yes.
If you look at the logic of the market, this is what the price says.
Yes.
We can no longer sell tickets at this amount. It's fine, it's a valid position.
But when
now,
the price goes down,
when operators now decided to go together and have a meeting and say this, at that point in time, the FCCPC saw it as price fixing. So why not allow the market, oh, I'm Mr. A, I'm going to sell my ticket for this amount because it is no longer sustainable for me. If Mr. B chooses to sell at 100 naira, but eventually finds that he can't break even, he will adjust. And the market will keep adjusting itself.
I'm going to allow Mr. Tunji to respond to that. On the issue of price fixing and the price of crude of diesel once the price comes down.
Thank you very much. This is a subject that interests me a lot, and you can debate and discuss a lot of these things. One of the things is we've been so used to this price by fiat in Nigeria, and everybody tends to say government must, government must. So there's a philosophical point where we really have to come to terms, just like beans in the market and all those things. When there's an advantage to be made, you see people will try to take advantage, but eventually the market will penalize them because somebody is going to either come in with new inventory that he bought at a cheaper price. He will bring his price down. The people who have been saying, let us keep this price high as long as we can, once they start to lose their sales, they'll say, oh boy, this man has reduced, my inventory is going to get stuck. Okay? Then people are also very remiss. They forget. The same thing with these aviation operators. Some of my international customers that I have contract with that are Platts based on international benchmark, when Platts went down and I had huge inventories of product I bought at how I took a huge loss. Nobody remembers the marketer at that time. They only remember when he's seen the international benchmark going up and he's saying, let me adjust my price because I have to order my next cargo. It may be at this price, so I have to keep this in mind. So I agree with Doctor. You see, when we talk about deregulation, removal of subsidy, we do not say there should be no regulation in the industry. Industry needs regulation from safety to prevent collusion, to prevent cartels happening, and there are very strict guidelines that we should follow. This, we believe, is what the government should be doing, rather than being the one to fix the price, because the market will penalize those who do not price appropriately. When competition comes in, it's just that it may take some longer time. People think it's immediate because they are used to government waking up on Monday and saying the price will be this. Now, at that meeting that Mr. Isong attended, a price was arrived at without any logic and whatever. That price is not sustainable because it is lower than the landing cost of the product.
Wow. Okay, thanks. Now let's go online and see a few questions. Can someone please help me and let's see questions online before we wrap it up. My final question to my panelists today, as we take a few questions online, will be, if not subsidy, what is the option? If it's subsidy, how should we go about it? So please think about it. I'm going to come back, but let's go online for us to see a few questions online. Can you help me read a few questions and then we're going to take that last question? If subsidy, how? If not, what? Wow, these questions are tiny. I need someone to help me just read one or two questions and then we'll take them. Go ahead if you have the microphone. Because I can hardly see the questions. Can you read from there, sir? From the laptop you have, yes. Because we know we have over 90 participants online. Let's just take one or two questions from online. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, so we have this. He said, in my opinion, import-driven market liberalization is not desirable, as this will lead to loss of jobs and skill acquisition. The government should also not run refineries. We should emphasize local production-based market liberalization. Obasanjo privatized the refineries and Yar'Adua revoked it. The first step on market liberalization is the privatization of the local refineries.
Okay, I agree with his opinion. That is his opinion.
Yes.
Next question.
He said, how can the subsidy discussion be broken down into simple terms for the benefit of all and not just the educated? Many are misinformed and have little understanding on the impact of subsidy as well as the impact of its removal.
Okay, I'm going to go to I don't know if the labor is here around and even the press. Dr. Femi, how can this language be broken down? They say the Turunchi is too much. Break it down to simple, understandable. I will need the press to help us. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, sir. I think in everything we do, especially as journalists, one of the things we think about is how does it affect the common man? How does it affect you and me? And in every story we write, the first question I always ask is, until you find yourself in that story, it doesn't make sense to whoever is reading it. So what I try to do is this. Whether subsidy, we can talk about subsidy as, so let me break it down. Let's see subsidy, in Nigeria we talk about subsidy that will subsidize consumption. But one of the things we also need to understand is at every point in time, for everything we do, there is subsidy. So we can either subsidize at the point of consumption or subsidize at the point of production.
Yeah.
So if CBN or the federal government wakes up today and says, farmers, we are giving you free fertilizers to help boost production, it's a form of subsidy.
Yes.
So, however, the only advantage is you are trying to boost production to encourage and increase productivity, which at the end of the day translates into more output and to a large extent maybe lower prices for certain goods and commodities. Now, you can also wake up and say, this particular product, for people to use it, I'm going to reduce the price.
Yes.
It's a form of subsidy. Someone is paying that amount that is not reflective of the market reality. So at every point in time, there's subsidy. But however, one of the things we should look at is subsidy is a form of price reduction or someone picking the bill to make a product accessible. So if you look at the price of every product, it's not accessible to everybody because inequalities. However, when we try to make products accessible and try to increase equality, then someone is taking the heavy lifting, is doing the heavy lifting at one point or the other. So like the IOD president also said, we should look, and that's one of the things I feel like I should have said earlier, subsidy goes beyond transportation. So every time everybody wakes up, there's no electricity, you need to put on your generator, you are subsidizing electricity for some households. So it goes beyond that. The daily Okada men, the downfall drivers, they depend on petrol. And as long as these things affect the everyday life, by the time you go to the market, you want to buy a particular product, they tell you, no, I have to pay so amount of money to transport it. So I have to factor in that price. And that also translates to inflation.
Okay,
at one point
let's read it. Just one more question from the floor, from the audience, online audience, and then we shall bring it to a close. From the online audience first, and then we'll come to the floor.
Okay. Yes. So we have this. So why is it difficult for the federal government to create an enabling environment that will entice private sector investment in petroleum products refining business?
Okay. End of my audience, please. Who wants to answer that? Okay.
Well, when you invest, it's about, making an investment and expecting reasonable returns from that investment. That's the principle wherever you are in the world. So there's a fundamental problem when the major product you expect from a big refinery is petrol, and the price of that product is regulated. So that's the fundamental issue. And if you will not address it, and let me just quickly, if you permit me, you see, why you talk about, the Okada driver, the barber, one of the things, I have had the opportunity of living in various other African countries. For instance, let me take one example. In some countries, when somebody dies and they are going for a funeral, in Nigeria, my typical experience is that all of us, we enter a car and drive to Onitsha or where. I lived in some other countries in Africa. When such a thing happens, the whole office will hire a bus and go in one bus. They have adjusted their lifestyle to the realities of the cost of those products because they are not getting them. In Nigeria, I don't see that happening.
You take your car. Take my car.
Today, in my house, personally, my wife told me we should put off the generator at 12. Oh. There's no need to take it to, because diesel is now 780. I said you are not, because before, if you even want to tie hair tie and it's hot, you go and put on generator. So, you know, when things don't reflect their true value, even individual decisions, you know, I'm sorry I'm coming across as an economist and too much, but individual decisions are not reflective of the value because people are not paying the real price. So choices that people make. In America, people used to buy huge cars when we were young. Asiwaju, American car is always big and long. But when the price of crude started growing up, people started making fuel-efficient cars that consume less fuel. So these things, if you try to manipulate it, it will not get to the appropriate result. I'm sorry.
Thank you very much. I think you're very right. Okay, let's take one or two questions on the floor, and then we shall bring it to a close. I think our time is almost gone. Okay. We would like those of us who are online to give us feedback, please. And then I know the NSC rep also want to say one or two things. So we're going to go back. So
Yes,
one or two questions on the floor, if any.
Oh, yes, one question here.
Yeah, go ahead,
yes.
sir.
My name is Pere, and I will ask a simple question.
Yes, sir.
In terms of decarbonization, and no one has said anything about that. So there is a short time to monetize the hydrocarbon assets that we have. Why are we spending billions and billions to build refineries that will, when we know the future is going somewhere else?
Yes.
So if we have a short time to monetize those hydrocarbon assets, over time their value will turn to zero if the world shifts into solar and all of that.
Yes.
Why not just, you know, sell as much crude, sell as much gas, go and refine it, you know, outside, you know, somewhere else, and then look towards the future, solar, wind, invest in the future. So my question is, how do you put that in context? Short time to monetize hydrocarbon, the future is changing, and then the decarbonization story. So tie it all into this.
Okay, Mr. Someone want to respond to that? Go ahead, sir.
Okay, I would just say that Nigeria is richly blessed with oil and gas, and we will be best served by beneficiating this product as much as possible. Let the product do everything it can for us before it goes out of fashion. So if we can build refineries and amortize the refineries and take all the value from the crude and the gas that we have, sell within Nigeria, export, it's a small window, you are correct. Maybe 10, 15, 20 years. But I must say that after that, there will still be use for oil and gas. We may not put it in cars. It might be running power plants. It will be doing other things. It may be making fertilizer, but there will always be use for oil and gas.
Okay, I totally agree with you. Go ahead, sir.
So, in addition to that, I would also like to let you also understand that the world is changing, and as much as we try to change, you also need to understand that in the last, with the Russian-Ukraine crisis, we're able to see even the big powers call for more oil. Oil, gas will still be necessary, and that's why government is trying to invest so much in gas. Let's make use of it. We still need power. We are not generating we are not even distributing up to 5,000 megawatts. These countries that we're talking about have electricity in abundance, but we don't even have that. So let's make use of our gas. Let's use it to generate as much as we need, and then we can begin to talk about we will begin to work towards it, but then, until then, we still need our gas.
Absolutely. The comments you just shared coincide with what PwC did in the research we did recently, latest publication, to say that Africa will need the resources to transition to zero emission. Okay? So someone cannot give you a deadline of 2050 when you're not ready for it. Okay? So the world has 2050. We need our own timeline, maybe 2060, 2070. So right now you need every oil, every gas you need to produce. One more question from the floor before we, oh my God, there are 3 hands raised. What do I do? Okay, the lady first. Lady first. Thank you, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Yes, thank you, LCCI, for organizing this, and I thank every member of the
panel.
Exalted table, panel there.
Yes, sir.
Mine is just an intervention. It's to say organized private sector should organize themselves more and make more noise. We should not allow the noise of politics bring us down. I sent that question to Labour. If Labour, they're doing their jobs, but the noise they make is getting more people disorganized and confused.
Okay.
And if we have to continue like this, if subsidy does not kill Nigeria, Nigeria will kill subsidy. But I think it's the subsidy one that will likely have more effect. So organized private sector, your funds are tied to what is happening in the country. And if Labour will make more noise, they are only looking for their pockets. But your funds as business people are tied. So let's continue to make this noise.
Thank you very much. Organized labor should be, organized private sector should be more organized. Okay. The gentleman by her side, and then the last gentleman. Yes, sir. Just make it as brief, sir. God bless you.
Yes. First of all, I have to thank the LCCI for organizing this seminar. It is long and overdue that at last an intervention is coming in this direction. The greatest problem we have in this country is that we play down on some fundamentals.
Okay, sir.
Like you don't hit the iron when it is hot. And then, like subsidy, for instance, subsidy is not a permanent solution to anything.
Yes,
subsidy is just like when you invoke this state of emergency in a country. Obviously, you know that it's just for you to organize things properly before then remove the subsidy and things go normally.
Yes, sir.
People think that subsidy is not for life.
So our subsidy has gone for too long, sir. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
Yes.
It's not life. It's just there temporarily to put things in order. But we don't have time. And time too is another important thing we have to take into consideration. Anything we are doing.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate that. The last gentleman just behind you. Yes. Your last comment, and then we will wrap it up.
Very much. I'm talking of the state of the nation now and on fuel subsidy awareness. Now, there's a lot of mix-up and there's a lot of mix that have to be taken into consideration.
Yes, sir.
And I expected all the panels to work on this. First, the government said it's going to put $1.5 billion to rehabilitate the existing refinery. We say no, we say no, we say no, we say no. They said they have signed the contract. What is the position of it? What is going to be its effect on what we are talking about? 2, position of modular refineries.
Yes, sir.
We have only about 1 or 2 that is in place now or are now working.
Yes, sir.
What is their contribution? Are they meeting up something to look into what is going to be on fuel subsidy? The 3rd is on the Dangote refinery.
Yes, sir.
Dangote refinery promised us 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022. And now it's unending because we now see Dangote still asking for more money. And if there's no more money at this tip of starting up a refinery in Nigeria, then maybe we have to stop there. So what is the position of that? And when it eventually comes into stream, what is going to be the situation with fuel subsidy? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much. I think some of those questions may have been answered in the section where we were discussing earlier on, but we are going to come back to the panel and then we'll try and wrap it on it. So there are questions on the floor. I'd also like you to also wrap up so that we can make. So you have 2 minutes each to just kind of wrap it up. But before then, I'm going to call the ICA representative, Comrade Zaka Bala. Where is he? Comrade Zaka, where are you, sir? Okay, please, sir. You wanted to just, for a minute, please, your final comments. 1 minute, sir.
I'm sorry to say that I'm a little bit disappointed.
Yes, sir.
Because first of all, I'm here to represent the ICANN president. My name is Zaka Bala. I'm a practicing petroleum engineer. I'm a chartered accountant, and I'm a chartered tax analyst. I thought I was going to be given a chance to speak. Unfortunately, all I can say is this: the greatest mistake Nigeria will do is to remove subsidy now. If Nigeria tries it, believe me, all Nigerians will go into economic and eternal slavery, and Nigeria will be reduced to a melancholy country.
Why, sir?
That is the why I wanted, and it was the
no, but I thought you had the answer. Why?
I'll go, it's the why I was also waiting to be had. Yes. You're talking. I can tell you the 21st century generation of Nigerian leaders have failed, and they have derailed. As far as the oil and gas industry is concerned, yes, everything about the downstream has gone off track. You're talking about a country where in the last time you constructed refineries was in 1988 or 89, and you are in 2022. 33 years. Do you need anybody to tell you that you are going to experience energy crisis? You're talking about a country where you have about 200 million citizens. Apart from the 200 million citizens, you are having strategic industrial sectors, strategic domestic sectors, and strategic commercial sectors relying on less than 10,000 megawatts of electricity. Do you need anybody to tell you that you are going to run into energy crisis? And you're talking about a country who, as I say now, the person superintending over the crude oil and gas cartel is a Nigerian, Alhaji Sanusi Barkindo. But under him, Saudi Aramco is working. Petronas of Malaysia is working. The China state-owned refineries are working. The Brazilian state-owned refineries are working, and your own country's refineries are not working. And nobody wants to talk about it. You said somebody should define subsidy.
Yes.
I want to define subsidy my own way.
Which is?
Subsidy is a globally or universally accepted pain cushioning concept. And that simply means even if the concept of subsidy is not working in Nigeria, that will not invalidate what subsidy is all about. As I'm speaking to you now, I'm somebody who has practiced in the upstream, I've practiced in the midstream. Nigeria has no downstream. But I have operated on land location, swamp, and deep offshore. As I speak to you right now, in the whole of Nigeria, you don't have up to 10 active drilling rigs. And if you don't have up to 10 active drilling rigs, how can you even drill and contribute and even meet up your OPEC quota? Nigeria is a country that even has condensate that is not even being touched by OPEC. You cannot use your gas to drive gas turbines to generate electricity.
Okay.
And from even natural gas, you will get ammonia. From ammonia, you will get fertilizer. I mean urea, then you get fertilizer. And everybody is sitting down, so not wanting to tell government the truth.
Okay.
It doesn't add up.
So thanks for your comment.
If it were to be, what do you call it? What they do at the Senate or at a public hearing, I can come and give you the position of ICANN, right?
Absolutely.
Or the position of the president. But I'm here in my capacity to represent her, but I could be at variance. I am telling you, the biggest mistake Nigeria will do is for people to think that Nigeria is a rich country. We are only rich, but we are not a wealthy country.
So thanks for that comment.
But unfortunately, I don't have time. I thought I was going to be given time.
No, but you're not scheduled for that. Thank you so much for your comment. We do appreciate it. Divergent views as accepted. Your view is we should not remove subsidy because if we remove subsidy, there will be catastrophic consequences. We hear you, and you do have a right to your opinion. Now, I don't know if Comrade is here on air. You said you wanted to give your final comment. Comrade, are you still here? The Labour leader. Are you still on air, man?
Yes, please, sir. Can you hear me clearly?
Too clearly, but go ahead.
Thank you so much. Thank you. The fact that the NNPC and the federal government cannot keep to its promise of giving Nigerian 24-hour supply of petrol in all the advertised gas stations, that shows that importation of petrol policy has failed completely. And despite the claims that diesel and aviation fuel had been deregulated based on the import model, the products they are still scarce and expensive, proving that deregulation is not the answer to the crisis in our downstream oil subsector. Nigerian workers and the labor is now asking the federal government that the only answer to this crisis, since we have the crude in abundance naturally, why don't we, continue and also add more to local refining of petroleum products? Like the last speaker has said, NLC is asking that at this moment, the subsidy should not be removed because of the attendant untold hardship that it will bear on Nigerians. We still have subsidy in place. See the hardship and the pains. So if we are advising the government that there should be a convergence of the stakeholders, urgent convergence of stakeholders. Let them come together and rub minds and then look for a better way in which we can come out of this quagmire. Because by the time this administration took over, the price of the pump price was just 87 naira. And now they increased it in year 2016 to 147. But how much is it now? Nigerians are suffering. There will be a limit to the level of the pain and suffering that people can, in the length that people can go. And we just pray that Nigerians will not revolt at this time. Thank you so much.
What I would like the last 1 minute each, solutions. We'll talk about the problems of subsidy. So the question I'm asking the panel, the last question is, if we remove subsidy, what is the option? If we don't remove subsidy, what it says, profit is an opinion, but cash is fact. You are spending 4 trillion, 3 trillion, you don't have the money. Somebody's talking about production. As you are producing it, my cousins in the Niger State are stealing the oil. You're not exporting. OPEC has given you quota. You cannot meet OPEC's quota. So what is the solution, ladies and gentlemen? We need to find practical solution, not rhetorics. So who can give me solution? What is the solution? Anybody want to start?
Okay, let me build the cat. Okay, so basically, let me start by this. I just have
solutions.
Yes, I have 3 positions. First, I need us to disabuse our minds that the Dangote Refinery is going to solve the problems. Now, it's not going to do that. Okay. Rather, it might reduce a little bit because even the refinery had said that it was going to be subsidy neutral from day one. So let's disabuse our minds about that.
So just to quickly add,
so now,
sorry sir, the only thing Dangote will do for me, in my opinion, is that your shipping cost or your holding cost may disappear. It may, but you're going to come to that. Yeah, okay, but let's go ahead.
So I said it was going to be subsidy neutral. So solutions I feel we need to go ahead with.
Go ahead, sir.
Eventually, subsidy has to go at some point or the other. So to do this, we need to make things work. First, electricity needs to work because we need to look at areas where consumption of PMS actually goes to. Electricity needs to work. Secondly, public transportation in terms of infrastructure, mass transit, in terms of rail, in terms of buses, everything to make it easier to transport people and goods should be done. And the truth is, once you're able to resolve electricity problem, you discover that a lot have been addressed. In fact, majority of the production cost for companies reduces. And this also translates to reduction in prices of goods and services. So once we're able to address our structural issues, to a large extent, we are good to go with subsidy removal. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Femi. Mr. Esong, solutions.
I think I largely agree with you. There was a study that demonstrated that from 2016 to 2019, transportation costs went up by 287%, but fuel price remained the same. My point being that transportation costs going up is not necessarily linked to fuel only. Having said that, I agree that a lot of investment has got to be done, at least for the optics, with respect to transportation. Rail, roads, infrastructure. We need to work on the optics, because if you're going to ask people to tighten their belt, we've been here before. I remember people stopped driving big cars in government and started driving 504. If you're going to ask people to tighten their belts, all of us, all of them that are asking people to tighten their belts, need to tighten their belts also.
That deserves a round of applause, please. Everybody tighten your belt, not just us alone.
So that optics is extremely important if we want people to sacrifice. But the key thing is, from the point of view of the private sector, of the entrepreneurs, this is Lagos Chamber of Commerce. Yes. You are businessmen, you are entrepreneurs. What you need to invest your money, any businessman, any entrepreneur, is the certainty. If even the Dangote refinery, the refinery, he started building it after the 2017 petroleum policy had guaranteed that deregulation would come. Nobody will invest where it is not clear that you will recover your costs. That certainty is extremely important. If we want prosperity for our country, and I believe we all do, then if we believe in market-based economics, this is what we need to do. We need to create that certainty for the market. Investments will come. There will be some pain. Government should mitigate the pain where it can, in terms of foodstuff, in terms of infrastructure, but eventually prosperity will come.
Thank you. Solutions. Mr. Tunji.
Thank you. The proverbial question, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Everybody is saying this needs to be done, this must be done, electricity, refineries must be working locally and whatever. We have been on that point for 20 years. Meanwhile, as he has pointed out, the bill on the subsidy, which started from 2017 at 144 billion, is now going to go to 4 trillion, and from his estimates, maybe 6 trillion or whatever. The roads you are talking about, the transport, all those things, where is the money going to come from when you are servicing debts as it is, you are paying for subsidy? All those things require money to do. My challenge is this, is that the way we are going, this FAC, right? Already we have seen some months NNPC did not put any money there. What is eventually going to happen is that there will be no money to go to all those mushroom and kangaroo states we have created that don't generate any internal revenue. The upheaval that we thought we were trying to avoid is going to come eventually when we cannot afford to continue to pay all those salaries in all those states that keep things going. So, to me, all those remedies that you talked about that you can do temporarily to ease things so that you can take this step and jump over the hog, and then we all concentrate on what that money can do to take us. But if you decide you want to wait for all these nice things to happen, these things that are required, then fate will catch up with us, because eventually, first and foremost, we are talking about a wasting asset. So the oil is not going to be there forever, maybe 20 years. So the investments we should be making with the money now that we are not making is going to come back to haunt us. So the wahala that we have kicked for 18 months, we have collectively packed it all in a nice package and handed it over to our children and grandchildren, who will now ask us, how did we get to this point? And what I would tell my own would be that, well, we had the opportunity to do some things, but we didn't want hardship, so we have decided to hand the hardship over to you. Thank you.
We will tell our children we come to LCCI conference and we push it forward. Okay, Mr. Shino, further comment, solutions.
So, in addition to all the solutions that have been outlined, I would want to say that I want to emphasize on effective advocacy, both by government and every other stakeholder. Advocate number one, that Nigeria is not a rich country, because really, if you go out there, there is just this impossible illusion that is difficult to dislodge in people's head that because we are producing oil, Nigeria is rich. Yeah. So we need to find a way of effectively communicating it that Nigeria is poor. And that if something is not done soon, there may be nothing left. There may be nothing left, and there could be real crisis, and it has to be urgently communicated in every way possible, in addition to all the things that have been suggested.
Wow, thank you so very much. Ladies and gentlemen, can we give our panelists a round of applause? You agree with me, we've had a wonderful time. We spent close to an hour just discussing, and I know there are still more questions online and even here. So, but this time I'm going to hand over to our host. Thank you so very much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, our dear panelists and moderator. Please just stay back. Very soon we have a picture before we close. Right away, we want to have the closing remarks, and that will be taken by the Deputy President, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Gabriel Idahosa, FCA. Please, let's welcome the Deputy President.
President, LCCI, Asiwaju Michael Olaoleko, our guest speakers, Mr. Tunji Oyebonji, Mr. Olishino Sipashi, Mr. Clement Isong, our moderator, Mr. Peter Motweme, right? Motweme. The representative of ICANN, the President IOD, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I want to appreciate your presence at this awareness creation seminar on fuel subsidy in Nigeria. With the conversations that we have had today, we are confident that LCCI has added to existing knowledge on the history, economics, and politics of fuel subsidy operations in Nigeria. We will have a better understanding about the costs and benefits to enable us to make a choice on the removal of fuel subsidy or otherwise. The seminar was designed to facilitate conversation on the issues around government expenditure on subsidy payments and how this has affected government finances Our speakers have shared their professional perspectives to enrich the understanding of participants and Nigerians on these critical issues. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me specifically thank our sponsors. 11 PLC, I've always wondered, is it double one PLC or 11 PLC, Mr. Ivanji? Double one PLC, I thought so, because I had Mr. Ivanji said so once. So double one PLC, Nigeria Delta Exploration and Production, and Dubri Oil for supporting this seminar. I would like to appreciate our dear friends from the print and electronic media, and I want to thank you for your unflinching support, always in all our advocacies. On behalf of the entire membership of LCCI, I want to thank you all for honoring our invitation, and I thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Please, another round of applause for the Deputy President, Lagos Chamber of Commerce, and right away we're going to have a photo session, and we would like the President, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Asiwaju Dr. Michael Olawale Cole, CON, to join us at the stage. President IOD Nigeria, please join us at the stage, and then Deputy President, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And the ICANN President Rep, Comrade Zalabak Bala. And then we have the Director General, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Dr. Chinyere Almona, to also join in the photo session. So please ensure we capture the full line. Okay. Thank you so much, panelists, moderator, guest speakers, special guests. Thank you for coming. And for all the online participants, we want to thank you for your time. We bring this seminar to a close. We'll share the slides, the presentations, to all of you that have your emails sent to us. So I will advise all the online participants to please send your email to the chat, and then we'll send you the slides. Thank you so much.